Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. And in this episode, we have 3 more stories. Hope you'll enjoy. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. And our first story. Boss says I couldn't switch shifts to go to court sessions because of my contract. I complied. When I was in the last couple of years of college, law school, not in USA, I got a part-time internship at the state attorney's office in my town. I had an immediate boss who was as close as possible to a friend. He always complimented my work and taught me a lot, but his superior, the attorney chief, it's hard to translate these job names, I'll just call him chief from now on, was another case. He was a methodical guy who liked to boss people around just for the sake of being a pain in the butt. There were other interns my age and even younger ones from high schools, part of a program from the government. The younger high school interns would do activities such as printing, copying, and the most annoying, accompanying the office clerk to the courthouse in order to carry all the tax enforcement papers in a cart. This will be important later. The attorneys often came in late or went out early for court appointments, so I would be left alone working in my room most of the afternoon writing tax enforcement procedures. I had class at night and worked in the afternoon. Eventually, I had to switch my shift around so I could watch court sessions as a requirement to graduate. The court sessions were always in the afternoon. It would only take a few weeks of rearranging my shift whenever there was a court session. I would come in to work on Monday morning, then Tuesday afternoon if there were no sessions on that day, and so on. That's when the trouble started. I was a good intern. I helped my immediate boss out a lot, never got behind on deadlines, but there was no way that the chief could ignore an intern coming in on Monday morning and then on Tuesday afternoon. No! Just one more thing you should know. Around that time, all the high school interns suddenly left, so I and 2 other law school interns would take turns accompanying the clerk to the courthouse, carrying that cart all around like a high school kid normally would. It wasn't pleasing, but we complied. Then one day came Chief into my room while my boss was out. "OP," he said, "this switching shifts around cannot go on. It's becoming messy. I need you to come only in the afternoon, as your internship contract says." I tried explaining to him that I was almost done with the court sessions, that I had to be there in order to graduate law school, that there were no sessions in the morning. But he was relentless. Later that day, the clerk came knocking on my room. "OP, will you come with me to the courthouse?" She asked nicely. She was a good person, but it wasn't my turn to go. I told her that, and she said that Chief had discharged the new intern from going, so I had to go that day again. The mention of his name made my blood boil, and I immediately replied, "I will not go. Chief wants me to stand by my internship contract, and there's no accompanying the clerk to the courthouse under the activity session in my contract." She gulped nervously and said, "I agree with you, but he will not like this." My friend who worked in the next room was standing by the door and heard the whole thing. I remember the satisfaction I felt when she said, "You were so brave, but you're in trouble." But I'd made up my mind I would quit the internship, but I would rub this in his face, so I refused to go. When my immediate boss heard about what had happened, he told me to apologize to Chief. Chief couldn't just fire me because he knew I was right, so he tried to embarrass me into apologizing. I refused to do that and decided to quit my internship anyway. If I continued seeing that man's face every day, I would probably end up punching it. So I quit. Never talked to any of them again. I still shake with anger remembering this episode and Chief's condescending face. But I think answering like that was one of my brightest moments. And our second story. Working in a storage and knowing IT has its perks. This happened in 2007, 2008. So I got a job working as the only person in a stockroom of the bookstore in a multi-conglomerate bookstore company. I had an agreement with the boss that it would only last for 3 months, November and then out in January, as I had to go back to school. My boss, female and extremely hot, let's call her BB for Boss B, was nice and sweet. Until my first day. It was like she hated me. I have no idea why, but whatever, I got along with the rest of the staff. There was a Christmas party with a dinner for all the staff, but I was not invited. Whatever. The rest of the staff told me after the weekend that they had asked where I was, and BB had told everyone that since I was only working there for 3 months, there was no reason to invite me. This was said in front of the Christmas staff who only worked there for a month. They also found this quite strange and started to get the picture that BB really didn't like me. So off to my revenge. When we ordered books, we had them sent from the central storage, and we got about 1,000 books delivered every second day. Problem here was that the number of books we had ordered and the number of books we received matched about 50% of the time. The guy I replaced told me that when that happened, we had to call storage, inform them about how many we ordered and how many we got, which was either too many or too little, and that they had to go on to cancel the original order and create a new one, which took about 2 days. So the storage was often late with displaying books, as we had to follow stock and the system wouldn't let us sell books that we didn't have in stock. After about 2 weeks of this, I found it quite annoying and started digging around in SAP, which was the system they used. Me, having grown up with computers and had previous experience with SAP, found out a way where I could manually add and remove the number of books we had gotten, making the stock correct at the same time as I scanned/counted the number of books, meaning I increased the turnover as all the books we got the same day would be delivered to the store. The guys working in central storage didn't even know about this. BB asked me in January how I managed to have the stockroom completed empty every day we got a delivery after the Christmas rush was over. I informed her about what I did, but not how, like she cared. She just nodded and told me to write the steps down somewhere. Yeah, sure, I replied, or something like that. She had figured that since the stockroom was always empty now, she wouldn't need to have someone on full time in the stockroom and have the sellers do the work, as the stockroom wasn't full at all anymore. I smiled when I heard about this. So, to my last day. Had a talk with BB, who then asked me for the instructions, to which I replied, I forgot to write it down, and since I have less than 30 minutes left of my day, it's not enough time to write it down. Sorry. BB got furious and told me to stay on longer that day to get the instructions written down, but I just told her that 1, we have to follow the signed contract, 2, I had no obligation to write this down, nor did I have to teach this to anyone, as there was no one who was replacing my job. She proceeded to threaten to withhold my pay, but I just told her that's illegal. Norway's a great country to live in with regards to being an employee, and that I would then have to take legal actions. I was also in a union. Bye-bye, B-Boss. A few weeks later, I talked to a friend who was still working there, and the stockroom was a complete mess. They even had someone come from central storage to try and work out how I had managed to keep it clean, but they couldn't. They spent a fortune on updating their systems so that they could do what I managed to do in 2 weeks. I see BB from time to time. She does not look happy when she sees my face. I smile at her every single time. And our last story. Some bosses flag themselves as unfit. Several years ago, I was looking for a job, and a friend suggested to me to work at the same company she worked for. It was one of those flagging companies you see holding up traffic for construction sites. She's telling me how great the job is, how awesome the coworkers are, and how great the boss is. Sounded like an okay job, really. At this point, I have no other leads for jobs. I've applied to a bunch of places already, but haven't heard back from them, and it's too soon to call them yet. So I decide to take her up on the offer. The pay's not bad. I don't recall exactly what it was, something like $16 an hour. I go through the hiring course to get through easily. A few days later, the boss then calls me and tells me that I work for her and that I'm to do as she says. Furthermore, that only she has the authority to tell me when I work, with the lovely aspect that she will call me before 8 p.m. to let me know if I'm working the next day, and that if I don't hear from her, then I'm not working. I say fair enough. She then tells me she wants to meet me so I can be given the requisite gear. Normally, this wouldn't be a problem, but at this point, I've just gotten my license, and according to my local laws, I can't drive between midnight and 5 a.m. yet. The boss, of course, wants to meet me the next day at a job site at 4 a.m. While there is a special permit new drivers can get, it takes a few days to actually get, fill out, be processed, and accepted. So it wouldn't be possible for me to have it done by the next day. I told her that I wasn't going to break the law for her, and she got PO'd, but then eventually relented. Meet at 5:30 then, which was doable for me. I end up working a shift that day as well. A couple weeks pass and I'm getting no shifts at all. Sitting by the phone a lot, waiting for calls that aren't coming in. I haven't given up the job search either, though, until one night I do get a call. The next day, I'm on site at a location, and the manager there says for me to be back the next day at the same time. I tell him that I'm not allowed to follow that order. He'll have to speak to my boss, and she'll determine who gets sent out. He says he understands and that he'll speak to her. I get off work and arrive home right around 7:45. I check my voicemail. There's been no messages left. I check to see if the boss has called yet, and she hasn't. 8 p.m. comes and goes, and I go to bed with a clear conscience. At 7:30 the following morning, my phone rings. It's the boss calling. "Where are you? Why aren't you at the site? Didn't site manager speak to you?" At which point I respond with, "Yes, he did, but I told him to ask you. Remember what you said, to never take orders from anyone but you? That you would call the night before by 8 p.m. to let me know if I worked the next day? I didn't get any phone calls last night. I did exactly what you asked." The boss didn't like that. She hung up the phone on me. I never bothered to try calling her back. The next day, I turned in my logbook and quit the company before she could fire me. A few days later, I got hired at another job. Though the pay wasn't as good, the fact there were steady hours meant I was making a lot better money. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.